start speaking.
This is Andrea Yount. We are preparing for Therapy Thursday, our weekly broadcast on mental health topics. Therapy Thursday is brought to you by Affinity Counseling Services and A Lovely Pause. This is a test.
Affinity Counseling Services is located in Piggott, Arkansas, and Kennett, Missouri. We currently have 4 therapists in our office and are taking new clients. To join our waiting list, you can visit counselingwithaffinity.com. And to find out more, you can call me, Kindred, at 870-324-5122 or 573-840-0440. Thank you.
And A Lovely Pause is a local nonprofit created to provide community education, awareness, coping skills, and support to people with PTSD and other trauma-related disorders. This month, subscribers to our newsletter, The Pause, will receive free relationship goals worksheet. Use our worksheet to keep up with what you learn on Therapy Thursday this month and make future goals with our relationship bucket list. Visit us online at alovelypause.com or on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube.
Hello. This is a test.
We are testing. We will get started soon with our last episode in Grow Your Love series, Through Sunshine and Rain, Growing a Long-Term Relationship. Therapy Thursday normalizes discussing mental health topics in a safe, supportive environment because not being normal is normal.
Welcome, everyone, to Therapy Thursday, our weekly installment here at Affinity Counseling Services, where we talk about different mental health topics from a personal and professional perspective. My name is Matthew Yount, a lead therapist and president here at Affinity Counseling. To my right is my wife, Andrea.
Hello.
Vice president at Affinity Counseling and president of A Lovely Pause. To my further right, Stacy, our marketing director here at Affinity.
Howdy.
And also the vice president at A Lovely Pause. And behind the camera, as always, taking your comments, questions, and concerns for this Facebook Live, Kindred, our office manager.
And secretary.
And secretary. I was going to wait for you to say something. I was going to say more.
And then, but we're not just on Facebook Live.
Oh, we're not, are we?
No.
We are on YouTube now.
Yeah.
God, this is all moving so fast, I can't keep up with it.
And then...
And then
the radio. Yes.
Yes. And I am actually getting to set up today. I have a new mic stand in front of me.
Me too.
Yeah,
yeah.
Stacy's is up now. I'm the only one leaning forward.
Yeah,
so.
that's okay.
In general.
You just now have a mic.
I have a mic in general again.
Progress. We'll get you there too, Andrea.
Yeah.
Now on our Facebook, I know that they can ask questions or make comments about what it is that we're discussing right now. But on YouTube, do they have the capability to make live comments there? I'm sure they do.
Yes.
Do you see those?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Awesome. So I've got to really start learning all of this stuff so I can better talk about it.
Yeah,
while
you're a
we're
little
on the
behind
air.
in the
I
pick.
am way behind
Yeah.
at the moment.
Gotta get
Thank
caught
you.
up here.
I have
I
a
can
company
even-
to run. I don't know this stuff.
I can see.
That's
all
why
of
you
the
got all
things.
of us over here.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
But that's also why, because of you and other, we continue to grow. I think you got us on Black River Public Radio,
Yeah.
which was an awesome addition.
Sure.
So we can be heard there. What is it? 101?
101.9 Black River Public Radio.
There you go. Very
don't
good.
know.
That
Good
was
job.
good. That was good. It was a good
that's
little
not
jingle.
actually
Yeah,
their jingle.
If you have any...
I was expecting you to say Kiss FM.
We still
I
keep
know.
hearing Kiss FM.
We still
got
wanna do
that
Kiss FM.
drove into our heads as kids.
So if anybody has
Yes.
any questions about Black River Public Radio, you can ask Stacy. She has the connections there. So
Yeah, and we are looking for new board members. Radio is still a very important medium for being out there. It's free. You just got to grab the frequencies out of the air, man. So you should contact me if you're interested. Radio's awesome. Check it out.
It can be heard in Poplar Bluff, Missouri.
Sure can.
I don't know about anywhere else, but Poplar Bluff, Missouri. Oh,
No,
is it online
nowhere
yet?
else. Not yet,
Not
but
yet.
we are working on
Yeah.
getting online as well.
that's
So,
awesome.
yeah, future goals.
Sweet. All right. Well, so we are finishing up our series on relationships, and today is growing your love. We're through sunshine and rain. We're talking about
Yes.
long-term relationships, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good. Oh well, that was sweet of you. That
Yeah,
was-
you're welcome.
So we are since I think we are good ones to talk about long-term relationships since we have one.
Yeah.
And it is, I would
I
say,
mean, and
successful.
everybody here's been in one. So,
Yeah, I would say it's successful.
oh yeah, ours is successful.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
I
hope
would
you
say-
would say that too.
Mine's long term.
Yeah, and Kindred and Kiefer over there. How long have you guys been married for?
We've been married for 3 years, but we've been together for 5 years.
Right.
So they're in that process of learning how to grow in their long-term relationship and still learning each other and figuring each out and building that. And so that's a good foundation to have as well.
It is. So let's talk about like the different steps that tend to happen during the growth and development of a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
So everyone's familiar with the honeymoon phase.
Yeah.
And the honeymoon phase is more like where you're still dealing with each other's representatives.
Masks.
Indeed. That's a great way to put
Yeah, it
that.
It is. Well, it's exactly what you're doing. It's like, hi, here is my best behavior. What's yours? And we like pretend to always be on our best behavior.
And look through rose-colored glasses.
Indeed.
Yep.
Yes.
And until you start to recognize that, oh, that's right, I'm human and so are you, and our facades start to break down. This is why I usually recommend that people not get in a committed relationship, like where you're in deep commitment, like at least like married or like engaged for about 6 months, because most people can't keep up their facade longer than that. So you're going to see more of the parts of a person begin to leak through in that 6-month period. Now, there are some factors that absolutely do change that. That's just a general rule of thumb.
Yes.
Some of the factors I would say for sure, the age group that you're in at the time, because the younger you are, the more volatile you are.
Yeah.
So the older you are, the more established you are. History of a person. So you look at their history as like how many relationships they've been in. Did all the relationships seem to end so bad, but somehow it was always the other person and not them? You know, because then there's probably some red flags there if they're the common
Right.
denominator. But you look for things like relationship history, their reputation. So if there's things that point out that a person, that, you know, they're older, they're wiser, they're stable, they've had they've had pretty decent relationships in the past, they've got a good reputation. That's probably who they are. There's probably not a whole lot of like really bad skeletons in the closet, but if some of those things aren't in place, you need to get to know somebody more. But new things are always going to come out about a person the longer that you're with them.
Especially when you start living together after you get married.
Yeah.
Because there's a honeymoon phase that's like after you get married, right? Because then you're like, oh, we're husband and wife. And then there's this different type of honeymoon
Or after
phase.
you start nesting. at
Yes,
least.
the nesting phase.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's definitely a little. And see, like you've done that more recently, so you have more. It is more like whenever you start making things your own, or you have to start combining your
Your personalities.
personalities and your styles and stuff. Because I remember we clashed on that because I was like, I was like, you shouldn't have any type of say whatsoever. I'll do it the way I want to. Like, of course, I'm going to take you into consideration, but I'll take you into consideration my way. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that was my way of thinking.
Well,
and so
yeah,
it
it's
takes a
hard.
while. Yeah.
It's hard to like especially if you've been living on your own and you kind of got your vibe right, and then somebody else's vibes coming up in your vibe,
Right.
and like it ain't always jiving, and you're like, hang on, that is not where that goes. That is not how we fold the towels in this house. All right. Yeah.
And that goes on for a while, by the way. That doesn't stop in the early parts of the relationship.
Oh,
That-
no, you just have to learn how, because that continues. We still have that issue, and so you just have to figure out how you're going to deal with those situations, and you get better at communicating in those situations. Or sometimes you don't. You're just like, you just get mad about it and you have
True.
a fight. But then you learn how to fight well, right? So
yes.
that is a very big compliment that Matt and I have gotten a lot. That I'm very, I guess I shouldn't be, but proud of. that we fight well. And so,
Sometimes we say cuss words in front of the kids at each other when we don't need to.
that's usually me. So
Yeah, that is usually you.
I'll just take responsibility for that.
Generally speaking, like I've seen you guys disagree on many occasion, and you guys do it so well. It is a compliment because like how we communicate with each other all the way across the board matters, but like how you communicate when you're pissed off or like not
Yeah.
agreeing is like absolutely essential.
Yes.
Because like,
Yes.
are you tearing each other down about it, or are you being like, okay, I hear you on this point. Here's what I'm saying about it, and like maybe you're not always being like that cool and calm about it in the process, but generally speaking, you guys do a great job of that. Like,
Well, and I feel like that's something that honeymoon phase you have to learn. You have to learn after that honeymoon phase starts to wear off, because those little nitpicky things starts getting at you, right? And you try to be like, oh, well, I'm not gonna. That's just nitpicky, right? And you try to hold it. That's how I feel like I was. I know a lot of people are, but then it becomes more than that, and it just builds up, and then you just explode. So you have to learn how to deal with those, even those nitpicky things, right? Or whatever, and learn how to communicate to where you can have a conversation and you're not so often that's when it becomes me against you instead of us against the problem, right? So
So there's the honeymoon phase. And then I would say probably around roughly the 3-year mark, there's another thing that starts to happen where more of your guard becomes let down and you start to learn deeper things about the person, but you're also starting to really get into the groove of combining yourselves together as one. So, you're working in that ideology of a long-term relationship of two people becoming one person, still separate identities, but
like the same goals, same values, you're working towards the same, you have this same, you're a future that you're working towards together that's got the same goals in it.
Yes. And so at that point, you're kind of like, you're the two people becoming one. So your two identities like this, you don't want to be fully enmeshed with each other, but you want to be more like bonded together.
Right.
But still having your separate identity. But it's the bringing together of that identity that can cause friction.
Yes.
Because it's like, what am I willing to give up? What am I willing to keep? Also, it starts to feel even more real as you're bonding that together, and then that can be scary for people.
A lot of times you have to sacrifice things of yourself, or things that you might want, or things that, are compromise in a way that you might not, necessarily have been ideal, or sacrifice these things that I feel like if you're passionate about things, you should be supported in your passions, but at the same time, there's priorities, right? Like we talk, like you get together and you figure out your personal values. And like when we were doing relationship coaching before, that's one of the first things that we would tell people: write down your values. You do it separately. You write down your values, you write down your values. Let's see which ones match up. And then let's see how your values go together, and then start making priorities based on those values. And then so everything else that's kind of around that kind of falls outside of those values and priorities, both independently and together, kind of need to just be let fall away. And sometimes that's hard. I remember going through that. There were things that I kind of felt like I needed to do or was supposed to do that weren't necessarily, they were things that were hanging on and holding me back from the things that I really needed to be doing.
Yeah. Now, the 3-year mark can be kind of tough because what can happen is in that time leading up to it, one person or even both may have decided that they don't really want to like combine themselves like that. And that might be, some people have these like basically business relationships worked out with one another. Like, I think of like maybe political couples that are just like power couples. They probably really don't like each other all that much, but the fact that they're married is good mutual self-interest.
Right.
And so they don't really have much of a loving relationship, but it's just more, okay, we're just working together. I can also think of like couples that have been together, like they sleep in separate rooms, they have different bank accounts, but for some reason they're still married.
Right.
Those happen. But now if one person's really wanting to combine and be like one, and the other person's like, I don't know, I'm still commitment phobic and this is scary, the other person may start to pull away, and then you can get into a really difficult dynamic at that point. So around that 3-year mark where that should have already like where you should have fused, it's not happened. And so now they're stuck in this tension of one person pulling away, like, I need my own identity and my own space, and the other one trying to pull them in more. The tension can start
fearful,
to show.
avoidant person,
Yes,
attachment style.
People start to
Isn't it pretty normal though to go through like, after you've been in a long relationship where you're like, I've been a couple for all of my life. I wonder who like I don't know who I am as an individual.
Yes, that can
I
happen.
I figured that happened a lot with people who, especially people who have been like together since like high school and
Yes.
have literally never known anything
Yeah.
else.
Right.
You are correct. So there are specific things that can happen based on times you get together in life. If you already have kids, if you don't, if there's different power dynamics. There's a lot of these specific things that you would have to look at somebody's relationship. You know, I'm speaking generally what can occur here in like your average relationship. But you are correct. Some people get in relationships really early and they don't know who they are outside of it, and that can be something that begins to happen. But you know, at that 3-year mark, there might be that push pull of trying to figure out if you're going to commit. Now, then what happens is you commit and then you stay committed for a while, and then 7 years is about the other time. And that's the 7-year mark is where things you have not worked out previously in parts of the relationship can come back to haunt you because you know each other really well at this point. And some things you've probably just been writing off for a long time. Like, okay, one of these days they'll quit doing that. Okay, I'll just put up with it for right now, or maybe I've said something, but nothing changed. And then you're finally like at the 7-year mark. That's kind of like where most people are like, I can't take it anymore. I've about had enough. I'm not going to let you gripe at me like that anymore. I'm not going to put up with that anymore. Or this issue that we've never addressed is still here and it ain't changing. Are we ever really going to change this? And so that can happen at the 7-year mark. Another thing that can happen at the 7-year mark is they didn't grow the relationship and they've just kind of gone in their separate directions over time. They've just drifted slowly. And then they start to come to the realization that like, oh, we're different people and we don't really even have much of a relationship with each other.
There's that movie, 7-Year Itch, with Marilyn Monroe and I can't remember who the other person is in it, but anyway, like that's the gist of it is like, you know, like getting to that point and like you kind of drifted a little bit and then here comes Marilyn Monroe with her skirt flying up at the grate, right? And this guy's like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to do this anymore. But
I thought it was kind of interesting that I had heard somewhere that women will lose like intimate interest within like the 2-year mark, right? And men will lose it at the 7-year mark. So it was interesting to be like, you were like 3 and the 3-year mark and the 7-year mark. I was like,
Yeah.
I wonder how those intertwine.
Well, because like, you know, for women, they know pretty early on if they like you or not. And
Yeah.
especially if
Usually
they
within like the first 5
Yeah,
minutes,
sure.
to be honest.
And especially if they're going to be intimate with you. So if the 2-year mark, you know, like they've been with you there, and for them it may have been like, okay, well maybe if we just change up the relationship, like maybe if we just commit to each other. Well, maybe if we get engaged, maybe I'll get it then. Like I'll get that spark, and they're still trying. And then maybe if we get married, and maybe if we have a kid. And then after you've run through all of those, it's like, nope. I still don't like you that much. But and then that takes about 3 years for everything to cycle through. And for men, it's more the idea of I love you, but I don't really like you all that much. And so we'll still be together, but eventually, like after 7 years, I'm like, okay, there's Marilyn Monroe, and she seems like something new. So, you know, I'll go try that. So those are just like different timings of like when people get tired of each other if they didn't actually work on the relationship,
Right.
or like have strong commitment going into it. You know, then the next thing that tends to happen is like it usually is around like the 10, 11-year mark. And that's where you start to get into the long haul part of a relationship. And really, if you have not developed strong communication, love, connection.
That's when I could finally tell you that I trusted you.
Yeah.
It was about 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I think
10 years together, not 10 years
Really?
married.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
That makes me feel better.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
It took 10 years in a relationship for me to fully be able to tell him that I trusted him.
Yeah.
Kiefer seems upset when I'm like, I don't know if I'll ever get there. I don't know.
Oh, I know.
No, I got
know.
upset too when she
Yeah.
so I was like, we have been married for like 5 years. I'm not changing. This is me. You can accept it. And it took her another 5 years to go, well, okay.
Okay, 10 years is enough consistency for me. Thank you. I now trust you.
Yeah.
That was the mark for me. And it was just like one day I was like, okay, yeah, I trust you.
Yeah,
But
I don't think you're going anywhere.
It took 10 years in a relationship. Not 10 years married, 10 years in a relationship.
I think it's because I genuinely don't know how to trust anyone.
Exactly. Same. And I mean, honestly, there's still sometimes we have a little bit of issue with it where I try to,
Right. I definitely trust Kiefer the most.
Yeah.
Like that's something.
Yeah.
It is something. It is.
And I think that's something good for people to realize is that just because people can't completely trust you, that has nothing to do with you. Like,
That's more of your own
Yes.
personal.
Well,
that's
it
my
can.
problem.
Oh, it definitely can. I'm just saying if you're in a healthy relationship,
Right.
if you've got somebody with past trauma and they have a hard time trusting in certain situations, now you have to have that base trust, right? Like Kindred said, I mean, I trusted him more than anybody, you know, so I did trust him to an extent, but to say that I fully trusted him, it took 10 years.
But you know why it took that long? Because it wasn't me you had to figure out if you could trust.
Exactly.
It
It
was
was
your
my
own
own
judgment.
judgment,
Yeah.
yes.
Because you didn't know. If you can't trust your own judgment, then you never know if you're picking something the right way.
Exactly. So you can't lie to yourself. You have
Right.
You have to be able to trust your own judgment and your own mind.
So if it took that long, then it's because you were figuring out, can I really trust the fact that I trust him?
Yes, very much so. Yes.
And so once you developed that, then then it's a full trust at that point because you trust you and me both.
Yeah.
But I always look at relationships too as though even though I fully trust you, if you started to do things that started to show like signs of maybe I shouldn't trust you, like you did something that I didn't understand, I'm not going to be like, well, I trust. I'm not even going to ask.
No, right. Yeah.
I'm
that's
going to
true.
be like, hey, can you explain this, please?
Yeah.
Or like, what's this? Or because I don't know, that looks weird to me. And if you explain it, I'm like, oh, okay, well, that totally makes sense because I would trust your response. But but if I see a red flag, I'm not going to ignore it.
Yeah, notice calling out red flags is not mistrust; it's communication. And so, that's also something that, like within a relationship, if I saw a meme, I think it was just this morning, one of those graphic things. It wasn't really necessarily a meme; it was just words. But it was like saying, a conversation about how I feel shouldn't be an argument. And so, like, if you're just calling out some type of red flag, then that should just be a conversation.
Yeah, sure.
And you can't, but it's you can't be go in blaming. You have to be like, hey, what is this? Or help me understand this. Or
Yeah.
please explain this to me. Whatever. But that is something like you should be able to have those conversations about how you feel.
Absolutely.
Without having a big argument about it.
So at that 10-year on mark, you're really getting into, have we developed this relationship in a way that is sustainable? Do we openly communicate? Do we trust each other? Are we able to call each other out when necessary and hold each other accountable? Do we have it worked out what our goals and direction is going to be? Because if we do, it can carry on wonderfully. But it doesn't. But it's at that time also that the growing apart can continue to happen more too if you didn't work those things out. And so if you didn't work it out, you're going to continue to drift. And some people go 15 years, 20 years, and finally decide, I don't want to do this anymore. We have separate lives, and we're not even anything close to supportive for each other. And that takes people a different amount of time based on their circumstances and situations, but that can happen at those points. So it's like you can get through and have a pretty decent relationship for a while, but if you don't continue to develop and grow it, it gets stagnant. And I really think that's probably the key to a long-term relationship is you have to develop and grow together in some way.
You have to support each other and have the same values. I mean, really, those are two of the biggest things. Communication, shared values, and supporting each other.
Yeah, sure. But you and I are constantly trying to work to develop and grow new things. And some of those
I mean, that's part of our job, so.
Well, it is.
And that's part. It's our job because it's our passion.
Yeah, but we made it our job.
Yeah.
We made it
That's
our
what-
shared job.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
That's,
so we did that as a way because it helps continue our relationship development and our growth.
Yeah.
We are watching something grow and develop together, along like with our kids.
yeah, and our friends, and you know the people that we're building things with. So,
Yeah. So because of that, it helps strengthen our relationship. So I think those are the things that you have to have in order to develop that strong relationship. I think where people get mixed up, they get mixed up in the idea a lot of times that just because we're committed that it should work out.
Oh yeah. Huh.
Like, I'm married. Okay.
I don't have to date you anymore. I don't have to work on anything anymore. I don't have to try to please you or impress you anymore. Like that's not how it works.
Yeah.
That sounds boring.
That is incredibly boring.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very boring. And
Sounds awful.
But a lot of people fall into that idea. A lot of people have an idea of that if I just push the next evolution step of our relationship, then that's where it's going to be, and that's going to make everything okay.
Or a lot of people are just like, well, that's just the next step.
Yeah.
And we're just going to do it.
Yes.
So then that's, and because of that habit, there's a lot of people that fall into it that way too, just out of habit.
The next step should always be communicated, but it should just happen naturally at the
Yes.
same time. You don't want to force it. You don't want to be sitting around like, oh, this relationship's not good. Let's try this. Like, how about we just only date each other? Maybe that'll do it. And then so you commit to each other and you're like, oh, no, this still isn't working. We probably need to get engaged. Maybe if we got engaged. And so you just go through the whole steps till eventually you make the mistake of, well, maybe if we just have kids together and if you're not getting along already, kids ain't going to help that. That's just going to make that worse. You have to.
I don't see how anybody in their right mind thinks that kids is the answer to the problem. That always seems like the addition to the problem.
It is an addition to the problem of the relationship. I think a lot of times people do it because they have no meaning in the relationship. And so they want to have a kid as a way to find some meaning or at least give them a purpose in the relationship. They're telling themselves, hey, if we have a kid, maybe our relationship will be better.
But they don't get terrified of like how bad they could be as parents. So and then the relationship
They
is
ignore
already,
that part, yes.
already rocky, and they're like, I might be a bad parent, and let me, and my relationship's rocky. Let me see if this works. I don't know.
No, a lot of time, I get you from a logical standpoint. You're absolutely right. It's the emotions that
I was
take
about
over.
to say a lot of people in that situation, because I've been in that situation before, just honestly. And, it's you're thinking emotionally. You don't think logically. Like logic was not even a something I understood in my vocabulary at that point in my life. So yeah, it's not logical at all.
No.
No,
Maybe I'm too logical all the time.
well, you may be, but it's like, and that's not a bad thing to
No.
be logical as long as you can allow yourself to have the emotions and express them.
Yeah.
It's making the decision solely with your emotions because it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
The issue is we inevitably make most of our decisions with our emotions. People are highly emotional, and the vast majority of the decisions we make are based off of emotion, and then we logic out the decision later. So we make the decision with an emotion, and then we come back later and go, well, that's why I'm doing that. And then we try to fix up or cook up some logical reason as to the reason we made that decision, but we made the decision out of an emotion, and then we logicked it later. This is why good communication is important. If I come at you and say, I'm feeling this, but I don't know if it's a good idea, and then we talk it out, we're working on parsing out the part that's emotional and the part that's rational. And especially now if we add time to that decision. If we give ourselves time, then over time the emotions begin to fade a little and the logic can come through. And then that's why one day you may be like, you know what, this seems like a really good idea. And then 6 months later, you're like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't do that. That would have been a terrible idea. Because after enough time, the emotion's gone and it's not influencing you anymore.
My logical brain is like, that's a terrible idea. every time, and it's like, but am I going to stop myself?
So you already know it's a bad idea. Just can I actually stop myself from doing the bad idea?
That's the emotional trauma response, is not being able to stop yourself after you know it's logical. Like, that's the emotional trauma response.
Impulsive.
Very impulsive. And like, so somebody who's had, who has complex trauma or whatever,
I guess
those
that's
type
why I
of.
don't understand, like, why you would. I guess that's why I didn't understand that, because I'm like, I always know, even whenever I make bad decisions, like, I know it's a bad decision.
Yep.
Yeah.
You knew it going in, but part of that's also your just level of mistrust anyway. You just assume that it's going to be a bad decision because people get to that point. They just mistrust everything. And so they're like, this is probably going to turn out bad, but okay. Because if you have that pessimistic viewpoint, you would never make a decision if you stopped at everything you thought was going to be a bad decision.
Well, and a lot of
That's
people
true.
just get caught up in that.
Like, I would never do anything.
A lot of people get caught up in that emotional roller coaster too, especially if they have complex trauma or whatever history of trauma. They get caught up in that emotional roller
I
coaster,
protected myself.
and life just happens to them. Like,
Yes.
like they just keep rolling down the hill, and they're just taking what comes at them.
They're
So-
not even making decisions.
Right, they're not making decisions. They're letting life happen to them instead of like taking control of their life. They're just letting life happen to them.
Yep.
And that's, I mean, I've been there before.
Oh,
So
yeah, and you can end up in really
Yeah.
bad decisions if your environment around you is creating a circumstance where what's happening to you is not good.
Right.
I mean, if you had good things around you and you were just letting life happen, then that would probably be okay.
Right.
But if you're in a bad circumstance and you're just letting life happen, you just keep snowballing and making it worse. So I think the key to take away from all of this is if you want a really healthy relationship, you have to grow and develop together through communication, shared values,
Individually and together.
open. Yep. And the more you grow individually, then the better you grow together.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're finding that you're having difficulty with your relationships, it's just your own self-development, counseling is good for that. We are here to help. You can contact us at Affinity Counseling Services, AFFINITY, on our Facebook page. You can reach up our office in Arkansas at 870-324-5122 or Missouri at 573-840-0440. Or you can reach us at counselingwithaffinity.com. And we are going to start branching out and doing more telehealth services. So if you are in Arkansas or Missouri and you're interested in meeting with me or one of our other therapists for sessions, reach out to us, and we would be happy to get you started with telehealth.
It's therapy where you are.
Yes.
It sure is.
Throwing that in there.
Thank you. No, it's a good tagline. So,
we came up with it
I know,
like over a year ago.
I forgot. Yes. Too many things. All right. So next week we are starting discussion on
This week.
Oh, this week.
Yeah, Thursday.
Oh, that's right.
This is
But
March.
We had an ice storm, so we couldn't do last Thursday.
we
So
were
we're doing
making it-
Monday. That's right.
Yeah.
So this week, what's our
This
name?
week, March is Teen Mental Wellness Month is our topic, and so our topic this Thursday will be teen mental wellness.
All right.
We're just gonna
Yeah,
talk about
teen mental-
health is the topic, and teen
Teen
mental
Mental
wellness.
Day is on Wednesday. The
Yes,
second.
Cool.
yes, and Self-Injury Awareness Day is on Monday. So
right.
Self-Injury Awareness Day is Tuesday,
It's on
tomorrow.
Tuesday. I
And
was like,
then
that would be today.
Yeah, and then Teen Mental Wellness Day is on Wednesday.
Cool. All right.
Yes.
Well, then we will get into that next week. Thank you for
This
joining
week.
us.
We'll get into it on Thursday.
When you hear our next episode, that's when we'll get into it. So, thank you, Facebook, YouTube, Black River Public Radio, and any other way you've consumed this media. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.